Hi everyone, my name is Tiffany. I'm from Beijing, China. I go to a private university.
Hello everyone, this is Akshay. I'm from Mumbai, India. I go to a public university.
My name is Fatima, originally from Nigeria. I go to an HBCU, meaning historically black colleges.
My name is Thi Nguyen, and I'm from Vietnam. I go to a community college.
I want to be able to influence the world, and United States stands out as a pace setter in research. I'm so excited about being here.
In my opinion, U.S. degree is extremely impressive, and that makes studying abroad in the U.S. an excellent choice.
There are many types of institutions in the United States.
I think it's just so unique that there's so many to choose from.
I had to make a major choice between the type of university that I was supposed to attend. The major factor that I considered was the scholarship opportunities that were available and the alumni network.
I've heard so much about the HBCUs as historically black colleges. I chose those because I wanted a school that really represents me.
As a humanities student, I prefer seminars instead of lectures because I find myself better understand the material if we get to discuss it in class. That led into my decision of going to a private university.
I chose a community college to study because most of the community college offer affordable costs, and they often offer a lot of majors you can choose from.
Some of the things I find that are in common between different types of institutions in the U.S. is that the curriculum are more comprehensive.
It is more practical oriented that really helps you get hands-on experience about what you're learning.
Students can benefit from forward-thinking technology and modern facilities.
And I love the diversity, the fact that it's a melting pot for everywhere in the world. And so it's an awesome experience for me.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to our today's session. We are very pleased and very happy to have you today here. Thank you so much for following us, for subscribing to our events. I'm more than sure that we will have more sessions that will be super useful for you and super interesting. So this month, we have our first webinar, which is going to be focused on effective resume writing for graduate school. And we'll have many more sessions about specifically graduates. We have next week the International Education Week, so please go on our website and check for all the sessions that we are going to provide for every day. We also would like to tell you more about Education USA Virtual because, as you know, we are here to help and to assist you with interesting and useful information you might want to know about your application for your graduate or undergraduate studies. And today we have an invitee from Clarkson University. We have Colleen that has prepared a presentation for our students, which are now in the process maybe of preparing for their application for graduate degree. I would like to say first that we'll focus on the presentation. You can submit your questions in this comment section. We will, after this presentation, we will answer first the questions that you shared to us before the start of this webinar using the registration link, and then we'll answer the questions that we'll get in the comment section. So, Colleen, the floor is yours. Thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you so much for being interesting in participating. We are very excited to see the presentation. I know it's very interesting, and I'm more than sure it's going to be very useful to our students.
Well, good day, everyone. I'm reaching you from New York State, so it's still the morning for me. Therefore, I might go and take a sip of tea from time to time to keep my voice nice and limber to talk to you. I'm coming to you from Clarkson University. So first, I'm just going to tell you a little bit about Clarkson so that you understand the perspective that I'm coming from. And then we'll dive right into resume writing for graduate application success. Okay. Clarkson University is located in New York State. You can see the gold section or orange, depending on your monitor. And the town of Potsdam is in the northern part of New York State, just south of the Canadian border. So it's about 6 hours north of New York City. And we're a STEM-focused, research-based university. So we can go to the next. And you can tell that Clarkson is in the top 10 of small universities that are research focused in STEM. And when you look at that list, it's a very good list for us to be in. We're proud of our reputation for excellent STEM-focused education. And I think you may already know that STEM stands for science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. So we're very much a tech-focused institution. And lots of my advice comes from advising students applying for engineering, science, health sciences, and things like that. And I just wanted to go over some of the top reasons for graduate study, because that can affect how you write your write your resume. So traditionally, graduate students want to participate in research, writing a thesis if you're a master's student, or a dissertation if you're a PhD student. But increasingly, master's and doctoral degrees are seen as ways to obtain important licensure or credentials that students need, like to become a professional engineer or to become a physician's assistant, or lots of different professions require a master's or PhD. In the US, for example, teaching requires a master's degree in most states. But you also gain a deeper understanding of your field, and both the knowledge and the professionalism. You advance to a higher level once you earn your master's or PhD, and you can also develop a complementary skill set. So if you are an undergraduate engineering student, you might want to get like an MBA in order to complement, that's where it comes complementary, to complement your engineering skills with business and management skills. So you can not only do the engineering work yourself, but you can lead teams of others to do that kind of work. And so for today, we're talking about effective resume writing for graduate school admission. And let's go ahead to the next slide, and we'll look at what is a resume, right? You may never have heard about what a resume is, or you might only be familiar with a resume as something we use in America that is not common in other countries. So let's just dig into what it is first before we talk about how to do it. And a resume is really a brief document of just 1 or 2 pages that summarizes personal and professional and educational background. The purpose of it is to highlight your skills, experience, and qualifications. It's generally much shorter than, we'll look at the difference between a resume and a CV in just a minute, but they're created usually as part of an application for employment. But in this case, we're looking at a resume in terms of how you use it as part of a graduate application. So it's a specialized usage of a resume. And you can see the sample there on the right. In the US, when we use the name Jane Doe or John Doe, that's just a stand-in for any person's name. It's not an actual person's name. Okay, let's go ahead. And let's look at the difference between the CV that you're probably more accustomed to and the resume, which is the more US style. So, but we also use CVs in the United States, and they're almost exclusively for academic and research type of jobs. But a resume can be used in a more general way. Also, a curriculum vitae is like, when you look at the Latin meaning of that, it's like a summary of everything you've ever done. But a resume is sort of more curated. You pick what you put on your resume. You don't just put everything. One similarity is that a CV and a resume both include your achievements in academics and in your profession. But the resume is really targeted at the position that you're applying for, whether it's a job or whether you're applying for graduate study. Your resume should not always be the same. It should always be tailored to the specific purpose. As I said, a curriculum vitae, a CV, can be very long, but a resume is usually only 1 or 2 pages. Only very, very experienced people go on to a 3rd page. A CV will go into more detail about publications. On a resume, those are kind of optional, but for a graduate school resume, of course, you're going to want to put any publications that you've had. Both are going to include academic honors and awards. The resume is going to be a little bit more selective. You're going to be a little more selective about what to include. You're not going to include every award you've ever received. CVs include references. Resumes rarely do. In the US, the list of references would be presented separately. CVs are always chronological, with the oldest experience at the beginning going down to the most recent. Resumes have it flipped. We do it in what we call reverse chronological order. You put the most recent experience at the top, and then you go backwards. And on a resume, it's okay to pick a point at which you just don't include your experience anymore, right? I have been working since about 1984. So you can expect that there are a lot of things on my resume. And the older things I either leave off or I only use depending on the circumstance. Yeah, and that's really about the differences between a resume and a CV. And we can talk more during the discussion about which one you might want to use if you already have a CV. As I said, and I'll say again, the resume is brief, just 1 or 2 pages, and that's perfectly relevant for someone who's just graduated for a bachelor's and may only have a couple of years of experience. You only really need a page if you're very concise and you tailor your message carefully. The focus is on the most essential facts, and so you always make sure to put those in a prominent location. There's no standard format for a resume, and we can look at a couple of those as we talk, but you're going to want to focus on the most important things. For a recent graduate, you might put the education at the top, but for someone who graduated a while ago, you'll put the experience at the top and the education further down. And keep in mind that when you're using a resume for a graduate application, it might be reviewed by people outside of the graduate admission office or the department that you're applying to. At many universities, there are graduate assistantships outside of the academic offices. They're still academic in nature, but they're not like the traditional teaching or research assistantship. So at some universities, there might be an assistantship in a tutoring center or other parts of the campus, advising or something like that. And they would want to see your resume also to see if you're a good match for the types of opportunities that they're trying to fill. Okay, so there are some do's and don'ts about resumes. And the first one is kind of a pet peeve of mine, and that's about the email address. Make sure you choose an email address that you check frequently. My experience is that the younger you are, your email address. So make sure you check your account regularly and put that email address on the resume. Don't use a cute kind of email address, right? The worst one I ever saw was I think Spanky Pants. So that might be okay for your friends, but you're not going to put that on your graduate application resume, right? The typical one that people will use is like first name dot last name at Gmail. So if you don't already have a very straightforward email address, create one for this purpose and put the same email address on your resume that you use for your graduate application. You want everything to match up. You don't want people to be emailing you at different accounts and not realizing that you're maybe the same person. Okay, make sure that when you put links in your resume that they're all active and that you've checked them. So if you put a section with your publications, you're going to want to put a URL in there so that any faculty member on the admission committee can click on that and read an abstract of your work or whatever portfolio you might be sharing with the admission committee. The same for your email address. You want it to be a link. Also, you should have your LinkedIn on your resume, and your LinkedIn profile should be professional and up to date, maybe with a good picture. We typically do not put pictures on resumes in the United States, but when you Google images of resumes, many of them do have pictures. Traditionally, we don't use photographs because we don't use anything that could create a stereotype in the mind of the person who's reading the resume, right? We don't want any discrimination based on what's in or not in the resume. So while it's very common outside of the US for people to put certain things on their CV, those same things would probably not be on a US style resume. And those include your age, male or female, marital status, religion, any other things like that. We would not put those on a resume because any of those things could create a stereotype about you in the mind of the reader, and we don't want to do that. Some things they may be able to tell or guess from the resume, right? Like the one that I've given here as an example has the name Sarah Johnson. So Sarah is typically a woman's name, and when you see that name, you would guess that it's a woman. But she hasn't put on the image, on the resume, that she's a female, right? And if we can make if we can go back to the full screen of this slide, then I can show you a little bit about what I thought was really good about this example resume that I found online. So you can see that up in the right, the person has given the email address, telephone number, city and state where she lives, and the LinkedIn profile. It used to be traditionally people would put their address, their mailing address on the resume, but we're not mailing people things anymore. So we just put the city and state. We don't want someone to be able to find us based on the resume, because these things do end up online sometimes. And Sarah has chosen to put as sort of her job title, graduate school, a grad school applicant. And then there's a little section there underneath there. And we'll talk about all these sections coming up. But I did want to say that one thing I liked about this resume was that the student doesn't have a lot of work experience related to her field of computer science. So there's a nice internship there. But after that, she's got this dog walker job, which you would not think was very related. But she's found a way to make it related to her interest in computer science and information technology in a very compelling way. So that I found was a very useful thing to do in a resume. Okay, let's keep going. These are the main components of what you're going to find in a resume. The contact information, which we've talked about a bit, education, research and work experience, skills and certifications, relevant honors and awards, and if you speak any languages, you might want to include that, especially if it's relevant to the field of study you're going to be in. The first three on that list are essential. And after that, they're sort of as needed, as you need them. Okay, so let's start to dig into the different sections. And here are a couple of examples. You can see that the contact information is in different places on these resumes based on the layout that the person was looking for. It can go right under your name, like on the Alexa Ray resume, or it can go off to the side, but near the top, as on the Kristen Lapid resume. One thing that's nice about Kristen's resume is she's got those little logos or next to the different things, so you can quickly see, the pin for the location, the little phone icon, that kind of thing. And that's all, nice and cute. I think on Kristen's, though, that the LinkedIn should look like a link that you can click on and go straight to her LinkedIn profile. But you're definitely going to want the city and maybe country where you're located, a phone number, if that phone number is WhatsApp, you're going to want to mention that it's WhatsApp, because many people who work internationally in the US use WhatsApp. And if your only phone is like a traditional landline phone, someone might not call you. Yeah, and your email address, your LinkedIn profile. Those are the main things. Okay, so these two sections, as I said, are essential, and you can switch them, right? The education section can come first, or the work experience can come first. A lot depends on how much work experience you have. If the work experience is more robust, or you have more experience, you can put that first. Or if you've been out of school for a while, away from your studies. But in the education section, you should put the name of the institution where you studied, the degree earned, and the graduation date. If you are a current student, add the expected completion date. That's a big issue that we find with international students, is that if they haven't completed their degree yet, whether it's a master's or a bachelor's, they don't put anything. And we need to know when you're expecting to graduate. You should include any thesis or dissertation topics. Often undergraduate students will do an honors thesis or some kind of graduation project, so you can include that. And if you if you have a strong GPA, you like 3.3 or higher on the US scale, you should go ahead and include that. You can put your average in your own system. Just make sure to put out, like if you're on a 5-point system, you could say 4.5 out of 5, so that we know, because in the US a 4 is the perfect GPA. So anything higher than 4 might be confusing. Or if it's a percentage basis, you can put the percentage. In the work experience, you can describe relevant jobs, internships, or research projects. I would put employment separate from research unless the research was part of a job. And you should use bullet points and make sure that all of the bullet points are in the same kind of grammatical format, right? Like you could start each one with an action verb, conducted, calculated, performed, right? And try to quantify whatever it is that you did. So if you increased productivity by a certain percent, if you increased the number of clients by a certain percent, you're going to want to put that in there. And you can put your publications in this section, or you can separate them. But emphasize the skills gained and try to keep everything relevant to graduate study. If the experience, you want to include the experience so that you don't have any gaps on the resume. But if you were working at a sandwich shop, you really just need to put the name of the shop and the dates that you worked there and your title when you were there. You don't need to give a lot of detail unless you were promoted, let's say, right? And if there's action that happened that's relevant and puts you in a good light, then you want to include it. Okay, so those are the two big important sections. And then let's look at the kind of other relevant information. So with skills and certifications, you would want to include anything that's relevant to your field. So if you're in a tech field, you would want to include software, especially industry-specific software, any lab techniques or equipment that you're familiar with, any certifications. One certification that's not specifically relevant to any particular field is anything with a first aid qualification. But if you're going to work in a lab, it's always good for them to know that you are qualified with first aid and that you have those kind of first responder skills. Also under this heading, you could include languages, especially if you are, say, applying to anthropology. You might want to put all the different languages that you speak. And you want to avoid generic skills like a team player or anything like that. That's more descriptive than it is a particular skill. Increasingly, I'm seeing people put this, and I think it's from a template that they're using, that have these skills with the little slide bars next to them to say, like, you're very proficient in this and you're somewhat proficient in that. I don't find those helpful or useful at all, because people are never going to show the things that they're not very good at. And you can't be good at everything. So I don't know what information that really adds. As someone who reads a lot of resumes, both for graduate students and for employment, when I'm hiring staff members, I don't find those useful. So I would save that space on the resume for something else that you want to include. In terms of honors and awards and things like that, definitely list anything academic or professional. Anything personal, you're going to have to use your judgment about. But if you're applying to mechanical engineering and you won a piano competition, I'm just not sure the piano competition is relevant. You can put it on there if you have space, because that just shows that you're a well-rounded person, that you have interests outside of your studies. So anything with like music or sports or something, you can put that there. Relevant volunteer experience is also something to share. At Clarkson, for example, we have our own rescue squad with an ambulance. So if you have volunteer ambulance experience in your country, you might want to include that, because it shows that you could be a very productive and welcome member of the Clarkson community with joining the rescue squad. But these should be brief, really bullet points. And you can highlight any cultural or global activities, especially if you had a leadership role. Let's say you're a recent undergraduate and you just finished your bachelor's degree last June, and now you're applying for master's study. If you were the leader of some student groups on your campus, you might want to include some of that, because you probably don't have a full page of information. So you can highlight any leadership roles that you've had, especially if they show that you are a very trustworthy person, like being a treasurer, right? Handling the money, or being a president or vice president of a student group. Sorry, my throat got a little dry there. Okay. In terms of formatting, this is the final touches, right? You've put everything on the resume. Now you just want to make sure that it's really good. Make sure you use a clean professional layout and use consistent fonts and styles. You might want to use one font for the header part with your name, your address, and all of that, and a different font for the body of the resume. But just make sure it's consistent, and don't shift the sizes of the fonts, because that can be very hard on the eyes. As I said, I told you, I promised I would say it again, limit the resume to 1 or 2 pages, and avoid dense blocks of text. We all know nobody reads dense blocks of text anymore. So use bullet points where you can, and don't be afraid of having some white space on the resume, because it'll scan better when someone is just looking for a particular type of information on your resume. So once you think you've got it, you're ready to go, it's perfect, you're not really done. Make sure that you proofread for errors and don't rely completely on spell check, okay? Because proofreading is different from spell checking. If you're spell checking, make sure that you're using American English spell checking and not British English spell checking, because it'll come out differently. But when you proofread, make sure that all the verbs agree with the nouns and that kind of thing. I think I mentioned right at the beginning, you're going to tailor each resume you submit to the specific program by emphasizing relevant skills and experiences. So in your tailoring, make sure that if you mention the university you're applying to, that you change your resume each time you apply to a different university, right? So if you say, if you have a little summary at the top of your profile, you might say aspiring Clarkson student, and then the rest of what you want to say. But you don't want to send that Clarkson resume to another STEM focused university, like say RIT, because when they see Clarkson on the resume, they're going to say, oh, she's not that interested in RIT. So they might discount it. Just make sure that when you customize, you continue to customize consistently across all of your target universities. Get someone you trust as an editor to review when you're finally done, okay? Not everyone is a good proofreader, and just being a good English speaker is not the same as being a good proofreader. But pick someone who's really invested in your success, and ideally someone who's a very good speaker of English and familiar with these types of documents. And finally, I think you won't be surprised to hear me say that you should not have AI write your resume. Don't use ChatGPT. I think some people use ChatGPT for the proofreading, to run it through there and see if there are any mistakes, maybe in that context. But you definitely don't want to just have a generic sounding resume written by ChatGPT. That would be bad by our definition. So I think this is good. I've gotten most of my main points done in just half an hour. So that leaves us a lot of time for questions and discussion.
Thank you so much, Colleen. It was super interesting, and I really hope that all the information that you've listed in this presentation is going to be used by our students. And I really appreciate that you've included here very practical tips on what they need to consider for every section they are doing in their resume. Okay, so as I've said at the beginning of this webinar, we're going to focus on the questions that we've got before the start of the webinar. And then we're going to answer the questions that we've got in the chat. You guys still have time to submit your questions. Please use this opportunity. I think it's very important to share a question now. Okay, so we'll start with the first question. How many universities do you need to apply to in order to be admitted? And do you have to pay for all the applications submitted to the university?
That's an excellent question. And I'm going to assume that unless the questions say otherwise, that we're talking about graduate applications. So I would say you should probably apply to at least 3. Applying to 5 is pretty common, but more than that, honestly, I don't know if you really need to apply to more than that. If you're applying to more, it maybe means you didn't do enough research about the institutions that are the best match for you. And I know that my friends at Education USA can help you with narrowing that list to something meaningful and figuring out what are the important data points about the university to help you narrow your number of choices. At Clarkson, we are not currently charging application fees. We're still in our sort of post-COVID trying to help students out mode. Many universities, if you attend one of their online presentations, like a departmental webinar or a graduate application webinar, they might offer you an application fee waiver. And that's one way to manage the cost of the applications. But many universities are just going to flat out charge you an application fee. And if you want to apply to more than one program at that university, I would write to the admissions office and ask for a waiver on the second application.
Okay, thank you so much, Colleen. Here is also important to specify that it depends on type of degree you want to take. So yes, if it's about a bachelor degree, then definitely you are welcome to apply for more than one university for sure, and even for more than 5.
You should always apply to more than one. Yeah.
But Colleen offered you the answer to apply for a graduate degree. So thank you so much, Colleen. Okay, the next question: is it better to pursue master's degree first or pursue PhD programs along with getting masters in this time period?
Well, I'm always going to start with what we do at Clarkson. And at Clarkson, the faculty generally do not admit people to PhD who don't already have a master's. think about it this way. A PhD, a funded PhD from a university in the US, when you add up the stipend and the tuition and all of the things that the university is investing in you, is probably worth between like $400,000 and $750,000. It's a huge amount of money. So they are very selective about making those offers. And that's one reason why they're looking for someone who already has a master's. But if you have a bachelor's and your real goal is a PhD, you should apply for the master's. And in your statement of purpose, you should say, my ultimate goal is a PhD. At many universities, and Clarkson is one of them, you can join a master's program, and there's usually, if it's a research-oriented department, there's usually a mechanism for a master's student after 1 or 2 semesters to shift over to the PhD. The faculty will make a decision about whether they think they can fund you, whether they can mentor you, and all of that. And then they'll allow you to shift to the PhD. Some will allow you to go straight from the bachelor's to the PhD, but that's something you should really check on the website of the particular program you're applying to. At the graduate level, it's all about the program. It's not only about the whole university, right? Like the whole university will have an English proficiency requirement, and that'll be consistent. But these kinds of specialized requirements, like do you need a master's before applying to the PhD, that's going to vary by department. So you really need to do your homework.
That's good to know. Thank you so much, Colleen.
Sure.
I received a diploma of higher education 13 years ago, and since that time, I have gained quite an extensive professional experience. I am now applying to master's programs in the US. Given that I graduated a long time ago, what should I put first in my AC? I'm not really sure what the person meant by AC. Either that is an application or essay.
Well, I have 2 thoughts about this. One is that the question is about writing the statement of purpose, and that the other is that it's about the resume, and they are related. So the resume for this particular person should have the experience at the top, because the experience is the most recent and the most robust, and the education will come further down. The second thing is that the statement of purpose will give this person an opportunity to talk about what circumstances is leading him or her to apply now after 13 years of experience for a master's degree. Is it a personal, like, I've always wanted to get my master's degree, this is a life ambition of mine? Or is it, in my company, people without a master's degree will never advance to the topmost levels, and that's my ambition? So talk about where you are now in your life and profession, where you want to get to, and how the education will bridge those 2 things. So you're going to emphasize this in your statement of purpose, and you're going to reinforce it with the kind of information and depth of information presented in the resume.
Okay, so I think the person has answered here in the chat, and the person meant in my CV. So
okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
What about the CV?
I think if you're going to submit a CV because you've already written it that way, that's fine. You can submit a CV instead of a US style resume. Just take off the things that I told you are not usually on resumes, like marital status, religion, gender, that kind of thing. You can just take all of that off of there. But because this person's applying after a long gap from education, I think the resume offers the opportunity to be selective about what's appearing on the document so that you can focus the attention of the admission committee on exactly what's important.
Okay, that's good to know. Thank you so much. The next question, can students with only 11 years of education apply and study in the USA?
So this is a good question. It's an undergraduate question. If your system of education allows a student with 11 years of education to go to university at the completion of those 11 years, then I would say go ahead and apply for undergraduate admission. At Clarkson, we would review you. If you're from a different style of education, which would be kind of rare for our audience, but if you were, say, following the British style, where someone takes an exam after grade 11 and then takes another exam after grade 13, I would say no, because you need the year 13 exams in order to go to university in that system. So I would say yes, but again, read the website of the university you're applying to, and you might want to even email the admission office, the undergraduate admission office, just to verify.
I can also suggest the person to reach to the Education USA Center. I'm more than sure that they can definitely offer you the proper information related to your situation. So as we are spread in all over the countries around the globe, I'm more than sure that that they can help you. Then the next question, can you share examples of details that are often overlooked but can make a huge difference?
Yes, I can. So I think I mentioned pretty early in the presentation that there may be offices using your resume as that you submit as part of your application for opportunities outside of the department that you're applying to. So this is the place to include, say, teaching experience. If you've ever worked as a teacher, especially at the secondary level or higher secondary, you might make a great tutor in the tutoring center or the writing center. So that would be a reason to put your teaching experience on your resume. Also, if you think you would make a great teaching assistant, which is usually a full-time assistantship, you don't want to put that in your statement of purpose, right? Your statement of purpose is for your research goals and your professional goals. But your resume is where you can tuck in all of those other pieces of information so that when a professor sees you've got teaching experience, aha, this is someone I want to flag as a potential teaching assistant. So that's an example of something that's often overlooked, or students put the information in the wrong place.
Perfect. Thanks. Then we switch to the questions that we've got today from the students that watched us live. So first question from Camila. I got accepted to Clarkson University back in 2021, but the bachelor's tuition was a bit higher than my budget. I would love to know if there are any research assistant opportunities for engineering applicants to make the tuition more affordable.
So I'm assuming that this student is now applying as a graduate student several years down the line.
That's right.
And yes, there are research opportunities for engineering applicants. Most of the full assistantships go to PhD students, very rarely to master's students. But the tuition might be more manageable at the master's level. I'm not sure if it's exactly lower, but a master's degree at Clarkson is only 30 credits. So you can complete it in 3 or 4 semesters, so a lot faster than a bachelor's degree. And once you arrive on campus and faculty get to know you, there may be more opportunities for you.
Thank you.
And we would love to have you apply again, Camila.
Yeah, try it once again, Camila. I'm more than sure you will succeed. Now you are prepared and you have maybe a professional background, so you can definitely specify that in your resume.
Yes.
Okay, the next question is actually from the same person that we've answered about the 13 years of education. So we'll take some time to address the question.
Pivot. Okay, so this was remember when I said one of the purposes of graduate study is to gain a complementary skill set to balance what you've already done. Should I list in my academic CV my professional and volunteering experience first, which is you're going to list everything on a CV. It's in chronological order. In a resume, in reverse chronological order. Sometimes when people want to emphasize volunteer experiences that were more than just a couple hours a month, they will put it in the same section as employment. So yes, you can include that in your CV. But a resume might make more sense because, as I said, you can kind of curate it and frame it a bit more like leaving things in, taking things out, that kind of thing. You can make a resume or CV more than 2 pages. But here's the thing I want to emphasize. Faculty members serve on admission committees, and they have to read all of this material. And so they are very grateful for people who are concise and present everything very clearly and in a way that doesn't create lots of questions in their mind. They can see the purpose, they can see the motivation, and then they can make a decision. What they are not excited about is lots of text and lots of supplementary documents, because they're reading a lot of this. And on top of that, they're probably teaching 4 or 5 classes a week in addition to their service on the admission committee. So be respectful of the admission committee's time. Think about someone who's going to spend 5 minutes reading all of the stuff that you've sent in. I mean, be brutal in what you choose to include and what you decide to leave out.
Perfect tip. I totally agree. And I think that should be also applied to the applications that our undergraduate students are also sending, because it's the same thing. It's the same logic. So
when things don't match up, then you
right.
create doubt, right? So if in one place it says you graduated in 2018 and someplace else it says 2017, even though that's not a big discrepancy, it creates doubt. And you don't want to create doubt. You want to very clear. What did my mother always say? Make it easy for them to say yes. So create think of it as a file, an application file or folder, where everything should be very clean and straightforward. And think about my mother saying, make it easy for them to say yes.
Okay, good. And a continuation for the same message. Also have a quite extensive professional. So if under application requirements, CV, not resume, is listed, would it be okay to keep my CV longer than 2 pages? I think you already answered that.
I think so. I mean, use your own best judgment, but don't overthink it. Try to keep it concise.
Okay. That's good. Thank you so much. I think we've finished with almost all the questions, and I see here people already thanked you for that. Okay. Camila, successes with your new application. I really hope you will you'll make it this time. Yeah, definitely. Okay, good. Thank you so much, Colleen, for your presentation. Thank you guys for being with us today. We loved that there were so many of you today viewing us. And please subscribe for our next event. Our next webinar is tomorrow. And since next week, we start with the International Education Week. We will have interesting webinars. We'll have interesting speakers, interesting guests, and interesting alumni that will also share their experience. Thank you once again, Colleen. I really hope we'll collaborate on many more events. And if you guys liked our session today, you can subscribe to the next ones. You can submit here your comments. We are really excited to know your feedback about what you would like us to do more, on what topics you would definitely like us to provide to you. And let us know if you've succeeded with your application, because that's also important to us. Thank you, Colleen. Wishing you guys a great evening, a great day, and a lot of success.
Good luck with all of your applications. And yeah, my colleagues who are going to present will give you lots of good perspective as well.
Thank you.